Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is a lovely evening in a very lovely place here in Silicon Valley. My name is Karen Tucker, and I'm CEO of the Churchill Club. And our program tonight is called The Future of Work. Levie, Levine, and Zingale weigh in.
Yeah, the law firm of Levie, Levine, and Zingale.
Right? I believe we have... We have an exceptional discussion in store for us tonight, led by Ashlee Vance of Bloomberg, Businessweek, and of course Aaron Levie, CEO of Box, Peter Levine, partner at Andreessen Horowitz, and Tony Zingale, the CEO of Jive. Thank you all very much for being here tonight with us.
Thank you for having us.
I'd also like to extend a big thank you to Jive, especially Amanda Pyers, and Box, especially Ashlee Mayer, for their partnership and their generosity in making this program possible. And it was just a heck of a lot of fun to work with you, so thank you for that as well. Yes. And I also want to thank Grace Ellis at Andreessen Horowitz and Bloomberg Businessweek. A brief introduction for those in the audience who are less familiar with Churchill Club. We are considered to be fairly widely the premier business and technology forum that is independent and dedicated to innovation, economic growth, and societal benefit. And we wish to encourage those things and think about it on a daily basis. We try to do it through the up to 40 programs that we present every year where like minds can connect with ideas and with one another. And we are member supported, and if you would like to join us, we will welcome you to do so. And we have an outstanding set of programs coming up over the next 2 months, including gamification of everything, April 30th, Shell Oil Company President Marvin Odom on May 1, right here at this facility, the incoming ARM CEO Simon Segars on May 9, Massive Sensors and Data on May 15, and on May 23rd, the 15th annual Top 10 Tech Trends event. These are just some of the programs coming up, so please keep an eye on us, either get on our mailing list or take a look at our website as new programs get posted. If you're tweeting, please use the hashtag Churchill Club, and you will find other Twitter codes in your printed programs. Our moderator, Ashlee Vance, writes feature stories about the technology industry for Bloomberg Businessweek. He's covered enterprise technology for a very long time, having previously reported for the business section of the New York Times, famously served as editor of the Register, the UK's most popular tech website, and also wrote for The Economist. He wrote a terrific book called Geek Silicon Valley, a colorful historical guide into the epicenter of the tech industry. And although he is a self-professed amateur historian, his true fascination is with the future and where we're headed. So he is eminently well positioned to lead this discussion tonight. Please give your warmest welcome to Ashlee Vance.
Thank you guys for being here, and thanks to the Churchill Club for putting us on. It's nice of you guys to go to work all day and come and listen to work about discussion about work afterwards.
Did you realize you found yourself in the unfortunate position of being the only reporter that understands enterprise software?
I think I was telling Karen I've like covered it long enough that it's now cool, and so I've sort of weaseled my way in.
Good work.
I thought maybe I'd let you guys introduce yourselves before we jump in, so maybe we'll just go down the row.
Sure. Aaron Levie, CEO and co-founder of Box, and you can think about Box as what SharePoint would have been if it were done right. So that's what we do.
Isn't Microsoft the sponsor?
I don't know. I did see that.
Microsoft is the sponsor.
Okay. We'll buy out that banner.
Yeah. Should have done it beforehand. I'm Peter Levine. I'm a general partner at Andreessen Horowitz, principally focused on enterprise investing. Prior to Andreessen Horowitz, I was the CEO of a company, ZenSource, that was acquired by Citrix Systems, and one of the original early employees at Veritas Software. Started as an engineer and grew up to be a executive vice president there. So that's my background, deep operating background.
I'm Tony Zingale. I'm the CEO of Jive Software, and we are a social collaboration company, really the new way to business, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. given that work is hopelessly broken and no one's having fun sorting through their Outlook inbox every day or dealing with SharePoint, as Aaron said. So there's just got to be a better way, and that's what we're here to talk about, and that's what Jive does.
So I thought, we talked a little bit before we did this discussion, and I don't know if you guys know this about Aaron, but he's a business book aficionado and historian of business practices. And I know you're saying you've been reading up oddly on office automation history leading up to this.
It's a lot of fun.
So what did you see that people were predicting in the 60s and 70s that either has or hasn't
crazy shit,
played
actually. And right between that 60s and 70s time period was some very interesting, probably LSD-induced innovation. But the main idea is, if you look at guys like Doug Engelbart and kind of what the initial ideas of what technology could be about and how it could connect us and how you'd be able to, in our business, the example is being able to get your information from anywhere, but in lots of other businesses, the ability to connect and collaborate and share and work with everybody. And those ideas were sort of, professed and I think invented very, very early on in this industry. And then we went on about a 30-year detour with client server and distributed computing that sort of broke that model and broke that idea. And so now I think we're finally in the past couple of years able to come back to that where we actually can see what a lot of the initial ideas of this concept of the office of the future can actually manifest in, where people can actually work much more effectively and use technology to empower them rather than slow them down and act as friction to process.
And as far as not living up to what these guys saw, I mean, you talked about a little bit client server, but I mean, what do you see as like the big hiccup? Was it the vision changed, or the technology just couldn't really pull off the vision that they were laying out?
Well, I think that actually the technology probably could pull it off. I think that there was one company who may or may not be a sponsor of this event that they ended up having such significant dominance of the model and the technology ecosystem, and they went a different direction with technology, and that ended up effectively becoming the pervasive way of doing things. And that way was you have your software distributed down to the PC, and the network was never really something that was open and available to everybody, and that meant that then we didn't get software that was able to connect people to one another. Of course, all throughout this period you have hundreds of X improvements of Moore's law cycles also improving things. So you get the benefit of just time in this space means you can do more powerful things. And finally you sort of end up with a big disruption in that model. I think Salesforce.com was probably the sort of early bellwether sort of example of that was the initial kind of driver of that in the late 90s and early 2000s, where we saw, well, actually this doesn't have to be the model with computing. We actually can deliver software over the internet. That's the first step. And then what actually happens when you can deliver that software over the internet? What does that actually mean for computing and how people can work together? And then what's funny is when you then overlay that with the stuff that we were talking about in the 70s, it's actually the same concepts, but finally can actually happen. Yeah. And that's the big difference.
I know, Peter, I mean, you guys have like a whole investment thesis around this, more or less, right? That we're at sort of a moment of change. I mean, maybe you could walk through it a little bit.
One of the, just to go back to one of the classic videos, you can go on YouTube and watch this, is Walter Cronkite of like 1965 walking into the home office of the future. And it's awesome. You have to check this out. He walks into the office and says, imagine in the future I can turn on basically a television set with a large CRT tube in the back and see news that comes out. And it shows like teletype news coming onto a screen. And then I walk over to this screen and I can see, what my kids are doing in the other room. And I walk over to this screen and I can actually communicate to someone else in another part of the world. And it was interesting that a lot of this has, on where we are today, a lot of that has really come true almost beyond even the technological vision that was portrayed through this video. I mean, here were 3 screens. We now have it on one screen. There was a little microphone there. He said, and this is your telephone, right? And it was like a stick that came up and was like, geez, that looks awfully old-fashioned. So where we have, so I think on a technological front, we've actually overachieved on the vision of what happens with work, the ability to work remotely and those sorts of things. I think one of the places where we failed, and I look back as a historian of sort of work in general, where we have failed, we are working 11 hours more now per week than we were in the 1970s. So it was promised that this whole technology innovation was going to make us more efficient and work less, spend more time with our family and all that. And what's happened is we're ending up working more as a result of some of this technology.
I think Marissa Mayer watches that video and goes, "Damn you, Walter Cronkite."
Yeah, exactly. Was the home
Work
thing.
from home, no.
So, where to from here? We, of course, are, and me personally, I'm very interested and enamored by the whole notion of social collaboration around given areas. We're investors in a company, GitHub, that really has pioneered the whole notion of a community of, in this case, developers working on source code together to build better products. And I think that this trend of collaborating on a given project with multiple people is going to be really a key driver into the future, and being kind of people all working together to achieve a common objective or goal. So that's where I think we're headed with work.
And Tony, I mean, you started off saying you think work is broken. It sounds like. I mean, so specifically, what do you mean when you say that?
Yeah, I think the reason it's broken is because we have, as an industry, to both Aaron and Peter in front of me, we've spent the last 25 years building the very best infrastructure on the planet. I worked at Intel back early in my career, and Moore's Law and microprocessors and computing technology and infrastructure and networks and virtualization software. We killed it on infrastructure. Absolutely destroyed it, right? Awesome, over the top. We also killed it on business process automation. With all due respect to Salesforce, it's Siebel Systems out of the cloud from 1995. It's great, but it's still forms and records and client server delivered out of the cloud, right? We killed it. SAP, Oracle, automating business process, which was what the corporate global industry was consumed with. What we missed was the people, right? And the consumer world, starting back, 2006 or 7, when Zuck's in his college dorm room, or Bill Lynch and Matt Tucker from Jive were in their dorm rooms in 2001 and back at the University of Iowa, they said, hey, it's kind of all about the people, right? What are we doing to automate what people do every day? What we did was we used a 35-year-old technology from DARPA called email that still has the CC line on it. Does everybody know what CC stands for? All you under 30 people in the room? Carbon copy. Hello? Carbon copy. This system
So that's what that is.
That is. See, Aaron,
I got it.
I meant to tell you. I meant to tell you that's what it meant.
And
I knew it.
BC, do you know what
Yeah.
BCC means?
Yeah.
Big carbon.
Big, really big.
Right.
So what we've done.
Wait, so should I not be responding to those emails?
Yes, not the BCC one. Not the BCC.
That is, like the future email. Like,
All right.
So this is the communication system that here we are in April of 2013. April of 2013. This is the primary
You got the month right?
communication vehicle and collaboration vehicle for the enterprise. Until Jive and Box and a whole bunch of other technologies, the ones Peter's invested in and whatever, there's a massive opportunity to do whatever he's invested in.
Minor $100 million
just a minor
investment, whatever.
A third of what Aaron's raised, but not to be counting, but there's got to be a better way, as evidenced by what's gone on in the consumer world. Look, we're not talking about Facebook for the enterprise or social for social's sake. Those are all very interesting cliches, but the point of that paradigm is there is a better way. I've been in the Valley for 34 years. We have never, in the history of the Valley, the processor goes inside the original IBM personal computer, wireless computing, mobility, you name it. The advent and the growth that we've seen in social networking technologies, all of it, in the consumer and personal use world has been nothing like Silicon Valley has ever seen in its history. There's got to be a thread from that paradigm to the workplace where we spend 11 hours more per week. According to some of the people in the audience, McKinsey, who published a study last summer that said the social economy, 28 hours out of the 40-hour work week wasted looking for what? People, information, sorting through my email inbox, attending meetings that in the first 5 minutes you go, why the hell am I here? What is this meeting about? 28 hours of the 40-hour work week, according to McKinsey, for those Catholics in the audience, right? There's a problem there. There's a massive problem going on with the infrastructure and all the applications and all the information, to Peter's point. Something's up, something's wrong.
So, but I mean, anytime you start talking about the future of work, it always seems to come back to sort of a discussion around how evil email is, or is it? Peter, are we going to have a different sort of console that people check into? Is that where things are heading? Because it seems like you've got Box, Dropbox, Jive. You've got all these different solutions.
You don't have to have Dropbox. It's not like a requirement to have that. But, yeah.
That's awesome.
So do you think, what do you see? Do we get like a new console, or is email?
One of the ways to think about what's happened with, it's not like we haven't been collaborating in the past. Started out with pens and paper, and then, at the same time, a telephone to collaborate. One-on-one communication. Email, in a lot of ways, other than the CC line, is a one-on-one communication. It's one person typically communicating to another. That's sort of collaboration, but it's collaborative within a very small group of people, two. Web conferencing is another sort of generation of collaboration, largely done between two people. And so the view here is that by adding people to the mix and the notion of social collaboration, we're now end-to-end on people, and I think that's the big movement in collaboration, is this end-to-end movement. It's not that email is going away. I just think that in the same way email is a tool, just like the telephone is a tool, I think that there will be much better ways for larger groups of people to communicate and collaborate and actually help them do their work better than these one-on-one communication vehicles that we've had.
And like we're already seeing the inklings of that through things like Box,
Sure we are.
Sure, absolutely.
But so like, what's sort of the big leap forward from where we are then to make that? Not to suggest that there is a big leap forward from Box.
Yeah, sure. Nothing we're announcing right now.
Yeah, it's all in the future. Is that?
Well, just one, and we can talk more about it, but the days of the 20-person email thread with the PowerPoint presentation attached to them, anybody have that happen to them recently? The big attachment and like, comments please, or let's collaborate on this. I agree, email doesn't go away, but I'm here to tell you, email as the communication tool in the enterprise to collaborate and communicate in groups and get real work done in sales and marketing and service and engineering, I think it's history over the next 3 to 4 years. I think the time has come for a better way to get work done, and whether that's a combination of Jive and Box together or whatever that is, because of the content requirements that are necessary in the enterprise, because content is really where work resides, but the communication, and like this term social is very cool, and it's very neat, and it's very trendy right now, but what we're really talking about at Jive is communication. That's what we're talking about in groups, across functions, across geographical boundaries, all in an effort not to talk about how cool the Churchill event was tonight. Hey, yeah, Aaron's really witty. Aaron's really smart, right? But he is, right?
Aaron has nice shoes.
But in an effort to, did we resolve that customer's problem today under the SLA requirement? Did we close that deal faster as a result? Was the marketing campaign at Nike deployed on a global basis in a much more effective fashion? How do you do that over email? I mean, we've done it for years, right? But there's a better way.
I just feel like we've been talking about collaboration for years. You had sort of the Ciscos and the IBMs going at it before, and now this whole wave of startups.
Yeah, exactly.
And like obviously people collaborate at the office, but it still feels like a nebulous term to me. I mean, sort of how do you define collaboration as in the sort of concept of the future of work? I mean, do you agree with what?
I totally agree. I mean, I think I also think that the sort of email is doomed, thing has existed for some time, and so even if that doesn't go away, I do think work changes pretty dramatically. I mean, one thing that we think a lot about, because the nature of our business is to take files and store them on the internet, we think a lot about, well, what are in those files, what information, what knowledge, what content is inside of that data format, and what actually was the intent of that information, and what sort of caused them to have to put that in a Word document or a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint presentation. And when you start to break that apart, it actually gets pretty interesting about what work could look like in the future, where instead of locking things into static documents and then uploading them to the internet or sending them as an attachment, what does that mean when the knowledge that are in those can actually, or the knowledge that's in those can actually be shared much more seamlessly, much more dynamically in platforms like Jive, in services like Box, across those types of technologies. And what you start to realize is maybe there's an opportunity to actually make a lot more knowledge available to the enterprise. And what starts to happen when all of those things that were in the 20cc chain were actually the wrong 20 people, and actually was supposed to go out to a completely different group or be made available later in the future for others.
Give me like a specific example.
Sure. I mean,
Exactly.
just every single day we run into this where there'll be some meeting going on inside of an organization, and somebody will type up a bunch of notes and they'll put it in a Word document, and then they'll send that around. But then guess what? 2 weeks later, when either a new person joins the team or that thing became relevant for somebody else, that's not discoverable, it's not searchable, it's not findable by somebody else in the organization where that's relevant. And so what actually happens when you can create this sort of corpus of information and knowledge that then does become useful for everybody in the business? We had a customer that I think put this probably most astutely where they said that the whole power of the internet, and they were referring to the education space, but you can think about it in any industry. The whole power of the internet, the whole power of the cloud, the whole power with these kinds of platforms is how will that change business when every single individual has basically the access to the collective knowledge of their entire profession, and they can use that to their advantage. And that's the type of thing that's happening with GitHub, where any programmer now literally has access to the code and the technology that basically every other programmer in the world is creating and generating. And that dramatically changes business, that dramatically changes productivity, because we've never seen anything like that.
Let me give you some other examples of where perhaps even beyond just sort of this sharing economy that we're talking about here. A couple of real examples that are very interesting. One is there's this explosion of a new sales concept called inside sales. Inside sales is where a salesperson doesn't leave the office and they sell direct sales to a customer somewhere. And it's been going on now, but it's really reached a kind of a frenzy right now where there's 15 times the number of inside salespeople than direct salespeople, particularly in technology. And the number one reason why that is because of web video collaboration. Web video collaboration has made sales very productive if I'm sitting inside an office. I can see my customer, I can collaborate with my customer, and so the productivity gains is now, instead of me having to drive to a customer or fly to a customer and make 5 sales calls a day, I can make 20 sales calls a day as an inside salesperson. That's one example of where collaboration clearly has a productivity gain. Yes, it may be a little backward looking in that it's WebEx and that, or GoToMeeting, but that technology has transformed the sales process. Another process is the design of, let's say, electronic CAD or electronic devices. There's a small company called Upverter that allows one to design an electronic device and go through the entire design process all the way through pressing a button to have that thing produced. So in the past, that would be a multi-step process to where I would write something down on paper, design it, send it off to a fab, it would come back, I wouldn't like it. And here we're shrinking these cycles by having the internet, having basically collaborative tools that connect the design and development all the way up through the production.
And what that does is that not only compresses the time to being able to do any one of those individual steps, it also gives the user of those technologies incredible leverage. And what that means is that you can have a 5 or 10 person startup that can impact an entire supply chain that they now have access to virtually. The thing that's really interesting about cloud computing is what it actually does is it takes it takes basically what 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000 companies would have had to have bought in technology and distributed across all their enterprises, and put that into basically a single business that can get the economies of scale of having all that technology delivered virtually. So the amount of compute that is in Amazon Web Services 10 years ago, you would have had to have 10,000 companies buy hundreds of servers. And so when you get those kinds of economies of scale, where instantly I now have virtual access to a company that has almost infinite economies of scale, that means that you fundamentally change what type of products that can be produced, who I can be able to sell to, how I at the basic level share information with others, and am able to move information through the supply chain, and that will fundamentally change business.
Tony, I mean, you mentioned the McKinsey study, and I think you guys have worked with them a little bit. I mean,
I'm not allowed to say that publicly, but
it's okay. I
someone
said
told me
it. I mean, I was doing a story last year where I was trying to look at sort of who studies office productivity, and it's actually hard to find people that look at this very closely. I mean, is there anything concrete we can say about
your weekends must be really fun
about what you guys picked out of the study? That is there any sort of concrete proof that the tools we have today are actually working?
Well, yeah, we hired this top 3 global consulting firm that begins with an M to actually go into the Jive customer base, because we were, to your point, very curious. Kind of what are the examples? What are some case studies? How did people become more productive? And so we asked this group of very smart people to go into our installed base and interview them, ask them where did they save time, how did the workforce become more productive, what were the use cases? It wasn't there's this wider case of you can find people and information faster, and Aaron's right. I mean, the cloud and mobility and the access to information and the speed at which that information, back to my infrastructure comment made earlier, is readily available. But what we found was it was actually embedded in the use cases, right? Within departments, within sales, within marketing. The example Peter described, the ability in engineering or in sales to just collaborate better. The examples around customer service were incredibly compelling, right? When you allow customers and communities to, in fact, answer one another's questions and not ever have to call 1-800, I'm in trouble, that company. The results are, I mean, it's like you deflect somewhere between 30 and 90% of the first calls to the call center. That's millions in most companies. At companies like VMware or McAfee, highly technical companies that, you're on the phone with the guy that couldn't install the virtualization software really well. That's a $300, $400, $500 call. If they're able to resolve that question in the community, just because other customers are motivated. So there's a very important point here as well, which is when you in fact deploy this meritocracy, what's the behavior? Why does another customer want to answer a question for someone that they have no interest in whatsoever? The reason is, and we talked about it in another future Churchill event, you gamify the community. People want to see the rewards and point systems. They want to see their name, their answer to the question trend to the top. We see it in Facebook, we see it in Twitter, we see it in Yelp, we see it in the consumer world all the time. That same behavioral pattern exists in the enterprise as well, and it's what motivates people to help one another out. The question to a community, even inside engineering, when I'm doing a chip design or I'm trying to resolve a sales problem, we have all seen the all-company email. Does anybody have the most recent presentation where we won the deal at AT&T? Now, when you put that question into the community, people are motivated because of the behavioral nature of what the software does for them. So what we found from the McKinsey study was real, deep use case validation of the productivity increases. And what does a more productive workforce yield? Well, it's the number one question that every CEO answers with when they say, what's your number one business objective? Grow the top line.
Yeah.
A more productive workforce grows the top line. You sell better, you market better, you service better. That's the bottom line. And so that's what we found.
So we talked quite a bit about the tools. I mean, what does the worker of the future look like? There's people who say everybody needs to learn how to code. There's people who say we need to sort of just be more analytical in kind of our approach to things. Peter, what's your take? Give us an idea of, for anybody in the audience who 5-10 years out, maybe what skills you're going to need?
First of all, I don't think everyone needs to become a programmer. Like that's, some
Thank
people
God.
believe that. Thank God.
God.
That said, we are moving very much into a data-driven, service-driven economy, right? And that really is the future. To the extent we are educating our students and future leaders to understand how to process information and make use of that data, I think that's going to be very important. And I'm passionate about education. I teach at Stanford. We're on the board of a company, Udacity, that's in the online education space. And I've spent a lot of time looking at the education of students, and it's actually appalling what's happening out there. So it really is, without proper education, there won't be work in the future, at least in this country, right? And if you look at California in general, 60% of California high school graduates are not qualified to go to college because they don't have the basic skill set to go to college. This is just getting into a 4-year school. It's appalling. And we need to, as part of this whole, what do we need to educate our future leaders on, is basic kind of, math, economics, the use of computers, and provide a mechanism for us to do that in a way that's scalable. Let's use the internet to help train people and help educate people and make that a continual process. Because right now it's really kind of, you talk about the future work, we all sit up here about collaboration. There won't be enough people to actually go do that stuff unless we're educating them. So I think it's a really important part of what we as leaders need to be thinking about.
I mean, Aaron, you talked a little bit about maybe people don't need to be coders, but they need to be a little more analytical minded. I mean, can you sort of unpack what you mean by that?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is Silicon Valley is probably part of the problem if we keep on funding, social games and Snapchat all day long. Then we're just creating the problem. Okay, so.
That was them in the back.
Which one?
Snapchat.
Okay. Oh, good. How you doing? Okay. I'm an active member. Don't worry. That's why I don't know what CC means. But so I mean. To Peter's point, I mean, it's not only implausible, but it's also not necessary for everybody to become a programmer. Software is a high leverage type of activity. If everybody became programmers, then we'd have nobody else to do anything with the software. So it would sort of be self-defeating. But you do need, and we are seeing a dramatic change in who can get ahead in business today. And every individual. And every type of person who's going to be able to succeed is going to be much more data oriented. They are going to be much more analytical. They're going to know how to make decisions based on information and based on the kind of results that they're seeing from things. It's a much less of a gut-driven, intuition-driven world today. And what that means is people have to be equipped to be able to use data and use information and use technology to be able to get ahead. And I think it's going to be those, going back to the point that we had from our customer. It's going to be the individuals that actually take advantage of all of this collective information and collective knowledge to succeed and to excel. Those are going to be the people that get ahead. And so being able to leverage technology and be able to leverage data to make better decisions in every part of your life and in business is sort of, I think, one of the more important things that people in the future need to be able to do. But I also think that there's, this is a huge problem on the education side. You obviously have to fix a lot of parts of the education system, a lot of parts of the university system to be able to actually educate people in the right way. But I think there is a lot of opportunity there, and we're seeing a lot of companies like Udacity that are really dramatically changing things.
And Peter's talking off. You talked a little bit about the Walter Cronkite video, and you guys actually should see it. It looks very nice, though. This
It's
home
awesome.
office.
You got it. It's awesome.
It's all.
Yeah, have you seen it?
No, Aaron tweeted it, and
It's
then
cool,
I posted
right?
it inside
You didn't
our
click it after the tweet? Okay. Oh, you did? Good.
Yeah.
So-
and then I posted it inside our company.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Right.
So there's sort of this vision of the very nice, luxurious home office, and then we do have Marissa Meyer sort of pulling people back in. Tony, what's your as far as the future of work goes? I mean, is it way more people working at home, and what does that look
Yeah,
like?
I'm
Or-
with Marissa. No one
Yeah.
should work from home, right? I'm kidding. I think.
Did you guys do a McKinsey study on that?
Yeah, we checked it out.
No, it was Bain.
I think the flip side of this whole workforce dynamic, and you can extend that to work from home, I'm not so sure. I'm really not so sure. And I have heard stories 10 times over of people that do get through the system and are fortunate enough to go to college and graduate.
People do that. But
people that do get through it, that when they're looking for their entry-level position, they actually are starting to ask the questions about what information systems do you use here, right? And what's the means by which work gets done? And because we've all heard the horror stories of the 22-year-old Stanford graduate or Berkeley graduate or Princeton graduate, showing up at
Tony,
the job.
I have a strong feeling they're not saying what information systems.
Yeah,
do
they're
you have
probably
here?
not. They go, well, how do we get work done here? And, what do we use to do? What
do I
tools
do
we
on the BCC line?
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, they get handed an HP laptop and a CRM system and Outlook and Office and SharePoint, and they go, have a nice day, right? And that's it. And they go, what am I supposed to do with this? How do I work this way? How do I network? How do I do all these things? And that story is not too far from the truth. If you talk to a lot of prospective employers, those questions are coming up over and over again. And we've all read the stories from the Harvard Business Review and whatever that says, half the workforce is made up of millennials, by 2015 or 16. And that's, people under the age of 30 that, didn't grow up with voicemail, didn't grow up with the CC line, and they have grown up in a world that is not that, right? So we have this massive, friction that goes on with the old way of doing business, which we've already talked about, and the new way.
And there's this interesting thing, which is we always, I think all of our businesses, and I think you've had to ask, probably thousands of startups this question is, are CIOs ready to make this change? Is the IT environment ready to make this change? And it turns out in this case, it's not only inevitable, but it's going to happen far faster than anybody ever expected, because the change is going to happen at a demographic level. And it's happening because you don't have to have the same level of expertise anymore to access technology. So 10, 20, 30 years ago, to be able to implement the CRM system, that was a deep expertise in being able to manage information systems and being able to roll out the technology in your organization, which meant that IT was necessarily this sort of scarce thing. And it meant that you actually had to limit the access to all of these things, because it was so much work to put it all together, and it meant that only the biggest businesses had the best technology. But today, fast forward with an entire generation that basically grew up on the internet and using all sorts of new kinds of devices, information and technology is instantly available and obviously innate to their kinds of experiences, and so they can go light up the latest internet service to get their job done. And so this is now an inevitable trend that CIOs are responding to by saying, okay, how do we now implement the best technologies that we can to allow our workforce to change? Right. Because it's going to change with or without them.
Sure. But I think there's a landmark article, I call it landmark, that your partner Ben Horowitz wrote at the end of 2011, and I totally agree with Aaron. But Ben Horowitz, obviously one of the founders of Andreessen Horowitz, wrote an article that was titled, "Who is the Enterprise 2.0 buyer?" Meaning, the Web 2.0, everything Aaron just described. And the punchline in the article is, it's the same person as in 1.0. Meaning, the same purchasing guy, the same IT guy, all of those people that were there to buy SAP and Oracle and Microsoft and all the last generation applications and infrastructure is the same buyer. So what I will tell you is, Aaron is 1,000% right. However, there still is convincing that is required to get across the goal line, quite frankly, for a startup company or public company or private company, right, to get paid. The convincing of that organization is still required, and that is a challenge still to this day.
One of the productivity elements around this, and I agree, is I've talked frequently about the renaissance in enterprise computing, that SaaS and mobile and cloud computing are all coming together to change the way the enterprise actually works. And what we also see is what I'll call the departmentalization of the corporation, where the sales department now holds the IT budget, the marketing department holds the IT budget. So instead of corporate, the CIO buying a particular piece of software, we have each department. They are the new consumer in the enterprise, every department. And in response to that, apps are becoming verticalized for those particular departmental uses. And what we see, to Aaron's point, is that not only within the enterprise, large companies, the departments buying these very specialized apps for specialized purposes, because I can consume all of this stuff online, usually with a credit card, pay as you go, there's a down market effect where now small businesses and individuals can get access to the best technology available that large enterprises have only used in the past. Let's face it, a small business in the not too distant past managed their entire business with an Excel spreadsheet. And now what happens is that same small business can go and access a SaaS product right from the internet at a very low cost that happens to be the exact same product that a large enterprise or large department uses. And that's going to add tremendous competitive advantage for all of the small to mid-sized businesses that have been hamstrung because they couldn't afford an Oracle database or some large software system that can only get deployed by the Fortune 500.
I think if you, to the departmentalization point, if you looked at just an org chart of an organization, every single role in that org chart will have software that's tailored to,
Absolutely.
their
There's
line
no
of
doubt.
business.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt.
Absolutely. We'll see IT budgets for those who follow kind of IT spend. There's $4 trillion of IT spend, that annual IT spend. IT budgets will actually decrease, and it's going to go into departmental spend. And it will increase, but it's going to show up as a decrease. That's what inevitably is going to happen. All that's going to add to worker productivity.
And the I'm impressed that you guys took a home office question and
Turn it back into the enterprise.
Actually, on the commute to work, I really believe this. I believe people like going to work, like going to an office. You ever try to work out of your house like every single day? Maybe you do. I don't, not that. But like it's actually a very lonely experience. Like once in a while, it's nice to work from home. We have been trained like. Our kids go to school, they go out of the house, they go to school, and they meet a lot of people. Then, you go do, everything is social.
Right.
Work is because, we spend more time at work than doing any other thing. I think people like going to work.
I think work is social.
Yeah.
Jive's tagline is the new way to business, but I always say inside my company and everywhere is that a little bit of the old way, like going to the office, actually adds the personal touch to it.
Right.
Quite frankly, did Steve Jobs hold design reviews over the phone or on a telepresence? I don't think so. I think he got everybody in the room. Andy Grove, when he was founder of Intel.
Got it, thanks.
Okay. When he was doing, the next chip design reviews with Gordon Moore, did they do it from home? No. Because certain things require that personal touch, and I agree wholeheartedly.
I like going to work.
It's not the work from home thing. It's the can you replace the camaraderie,
Exactly.
the teamwork,
Exactly.
the personal conversation. Yeah, the collaboration systems are social, and it's the discussion with context. That's great, but I'm here to tell you, you cannot replace the personal contact, and I think that's the whole thing.
And I think the idea of sort of work from anywhere made it seem like what that meant was that we're all of a sudden going to go work from home or work from the subway or work from the bus. But actually what it means is now we can actually connect up all of our information, connect up our people together all throughout the organization.
Yeah.
And where that becomes more interesting is not intra-company sort of working from anywhere, but actually inter-company working from anywhere, where a startup in Palo Alto has instant access to a supplier in China because of the internet. And any person of any part in the organization is able to connect out to their peers and other individuals that they need to be able to work with sort of throughout the world. And that's the sort of element of being able to be connected that becomes so
And that's the
powerful.
collaborative aspect that I think mostly
And that's
plays
right
into
on.
this.
And then you throw, and everybody will agree wholeheartedly, you throw the mobile workforce in there.
Yeah.
Because, Aaron's traveling, 20 days a month, and so is Peter, and so am I. And so then you throw the mobility aspect into, instead of work from home, it's like we're all on the go. We're in the car, we're at a meeting, we're traveling to New York, we're abroad. That's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point.
I mean, with like sort of the last generation of technology, I mean, one thing I noticed was that, it was like sort of guys that had worked at traditional companies that were developing the new enterprise tools. I run across all these startups now, no offense to Aaron, that are, guys who have never worked at a company. They are coming
What do you
from
do? Wait, hold on. Let's be clear. Let's be clear. I had 2 internships. Okay. So
they're coming from a very sort of, algorithmic kind of mindset of we're going to sort of solve this problem with some math. I mean, how do we know that all these tools that the Valley is pumping out right now actually apply to the mainstream and will make work at traditional companies better? Maybe for Peter.
I'm happy to talk about this. I don't think we know absolutely that every one of them will work. The beauty of SaaS and the beauty of the way programming gets done now, we can have a group of young folks, and it's fantastic to see all the next generation of younger folks actually working on enterprise as opposed to simply working on consumer stuff. But the point with SaaS is that we can go develop and deploy technology very rapidly and get customer feedback. The products that work well will continue an iterative cycle to get better and better, and the products that don't work well, they'll go by the wayside. The point is we have much more innovation occurring in computing in general because the access to compute, I mean, you can go to Amazon, rent a server, rent a compute environment, and start programming right now, and you can go test that with the community and get it to work. So I don't know that we absolutely know, but I do know that the feedback loop with customers is way, way quicker than it used to be.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, let me just say two quick things. So the first thing is actually, I think what's interesting is that category of people you're talking about will be the working demographic. So what will be interesting
The
is
startup founder, or?
Well, the person
They
who
work
didn't
once
have
in
a
a
lot
while.
of experience previously, they will be in the cohort of sort of future workers. And so, just as a small example, just from my history, growing up and using Napster as like your way of getting to music, and being in college and using Wikipedia, those things fundamentally change just how you think about how you should be able to get information, be able to share, and be able to work. And that kind of stuff is going to infuse the future of enterprise software, no matter who starts those kinds of future companies. So that's the first piece. And I think the other one is that one of the trends that is absolutely occurring, I think, across all demographics of people that are starting companies right now, are that we're taking a lot of the best practices and ideas from the consumer internet, from the companies that were sexier and were hotter, and taking the best ideas of what made those companies so powerful. It was that they could rapidly iterate new technology. They could bring their services out to hundreds of millions of people rather than just going out and selling it to thousands of people. They have different kinds of design standards. They think a lot more about the user. All of those kinds of things are now going to dramatically impact how you build enterprise software. And it's by not having any expectation or sort of entrenchment in the old way of doing things that's going to make it possible for those new startups to actually change how we actually work. So instead of it being will that software, how will companies respond to that software, it will be that companies will actually change because of that software. And that's what's going to become so powerful about having this next generation of enterprise software companies emerge and become more ubiquitous in business.
So I think in just a couple minutes, we're going to open it up for questions. I wanted to maybe just for a final thing, I was sort of asking you guys beforehand, since it is the future of work, I mean, if anyone has a wild prognostication about what they think is coming, obviously we're going to have people who are like mobile only, even in the future. And so give me sort of your vision for.
Yeah. So a little contrary to what Peter said, and agree with everything Aaron said. On the and then with the last thing Peter said on the innovation, the ability to innovate quickly, and in fact, leverage what's gone on in other markets and industries and apply that. I'm pretty convinced from what I've seen in my 3 years on the board at Jive and 3 years being the CEO that we've proven it. I'm convinced there is a better way to get work done. I'm convinced, not just because I'm the CEO of Jive, because I've seen the numbers, I've talked to the customers, I've seen the deployments, I've seen how this better way to communicate and get work done has become a mission-critical part of large, global corporate enterprises with hundreds of thousands of workers doing work differently. I think the challenge we have is all of the history and the infrastructure, and we talked about the IT departments and the politics of what's already been in place from the large incumbent stack vendors, and God, my relationship with IBM is 20 years old, and my relationship with Microsoft, and I spent all this money, and the reluctance, and that's why we go departmental, and that's why we go cloud, and that's why we go mobile, in an effort to, in fact, deliver the innovation in a way that exploits the opportunity and shows the value. I'm convinced on the innovation and the value that we've delivered, not just at Jive, but at Box and this entire cloud, mobile, social industry, I'm convinced. Right? The challenges are infrastructural, they are cultural, and they are behavioral. They are not technological. As I sit here today, I really believe that. The office of the future, I think everybody is mobile. I think everybody is collaborative. I think the org chart is dead. I think people with the best ideas and the ability to market and sell and service the customer and innovate fastest win. And I think those people rise to the top of the organizations. And I think those companies that figure it out are going to be the most productive, and therefore they're going to be the highest growth, and they're going to be rewarded from a shareholder value point of view. And my message to large enterprise companies is, you better change. You better get with the program, because you are going to get run over. You're going to get run over.
Peter, real quick, give me your vision.
Yeah, I'm going to separate from the technology into something I've been thinking about that's a pretty radical thought here, so I don't know if this actually happens. But imagine a marketplace of, suppose we all didn't work for a company anymore, and we all were independent 1099 contractors. And you were part of a market called supply.
Is that your salary or something else?
Company, 1099, yes.
Do you get options?
Yes, all of the above, full health care, everything. Okay, so we're all independent, we all offer a service, and the company, through a giant marketplace, arbitrates your delivery of a service with what a company needs. And if you have large enough markets and large enough sort of pools of individuals, not unlike we're starting with things like TaskRabbit right now, right? Where somebody goes and delivers a piece of wood to somebody or whatever. But imagine as we start to
that happened last weekend, yeah.
I delivered you golf balls at the golf course. But imagine that we had this marketplace of folks, and I really do think that there's an interesting concept in work where people actually will provide services to different organizations on a real-time basis. We have the capability within the internet to go do that. Totally. And it may be a very radical idea where the exact demand of a company, let's say I need an accountant for 3 days, I need 10 accountants to go do this, and I need 4 engineers to do something else, and on almost a daily basis, weekly basis, I can arbitrate my workforce on the exact kind of capacity and demand cycle, because we now have these giant marketplaces that are able to be arbitrated through the internet. So it's kind of a out there idea, but I think we're at the point where we're going to balance supply and demand in a much more effective fashion within the workforce.
I saw some people nodding, so you may have.
That'd be awesome, right? Anybody have some things they want? We'll get started. See somebody nodding over there.
Raise your hand for questions. I
or
think
if you want to join TaskRabbit.
Yeah,
microphone.
TaskRabbit. Yeah, TaskRabbit. That's a good one.
We tax the shit out of you.
Hi. How will machine learning and robotics change the future of work?
That's a good question.
Machine learning
And robotics.
Oh, robotics. I thought you said rockets. Which could be.
Anyone feel particularly? Peter, you.
Look, I mean, machine learning. We're if you think about drones as a robotic, a drone is a robot, happens to have wings on it. I think there are a lot of interesting applications that potentially change the impact of work. Imagine a drone that delivers a package to you, or maps out a certain area such that we have perfect mapping of traffic congestion so I can get to work quicker. So I think there are a lot of things happening with certainly in the robotics space in that area that will be quite profound. There's a lot of government regulatory issues we have to get through with the FAA and other things of kind of a gazillion flying objects. We have to sort of figure that out. But I do think it absolutely has the impact to change how we work, how we commute, how we get to work, how services and goods are delivered.
If nothing else, you have lots of drones flying into each other.
I don't know if it's directly tied to machine learning, but a lot of discussion about big data. We've talked about social and mobile and cloud computing, but the big data elements. There's all this information. How do you sort through it? Not only how do you sort through it, but in the era of recommendations and presenting information to people in advance of them asking, that's where this is headed. In the leverage of social graphs, and in these large enterprise social and content systems, the ability to recommend people, recommend content. These 3 people are connected to this. You should look at this. If, the equivalent in the consumer world, Apple Genius and the Netflix recommender. If you like these 3 movies, you're going to like these 2. Well, if you ask questions and commented on these 3 threads and follow these 4 people, you're probably going to need to look here. That technology is emerging in a very big way, and the algorithms all around big data are being applied in a very big way in the social and collaboration systems of today.
Maybe your computer respond doing your status updates based on
That's right. That's right.
friends are.
That's right.
Do you want to answer that, or we?
Yeah, well, let me just throw in 2
Yeah.
other things. I mean, there's this amazing article from The Economist last year, which was this idea of the 3rd Industrial Revolution, which was all about how we might finally bring manufacturing back to the U.S. because of robots, because what robots fundamentally need is software to be able to make them effective, and and basically that will have profound implications for the future of work. It'll have profound implications for the future of our economy if we're starting to actually manufacture things again because of those kinds of services. You could take it now even more to the logical extreme, which is and in some ways this is the negative side, which or at least in the near term, which is sort of what are all the jobs that robots can do more efficiently. And then you have all of those sort of implications from an economy standpoint. So we might bring over a lot of jobs at the same time, might replace a lot of others. There's this company, I don't know if it was YC or otherwise, that does robotic cheeseburgers.
It's Lemnos Labs.
Yeah.
hardware
So
incubator.
I love it because I love cheeseburgers, but certainly if you make cheeseburger for a living, it's very disruptive.
Well, hence going back to the education issue, which is why we need to educate people
So
to learn
you
how
don't
to
go to
deal with
cheeseburger
data as
college
opposed to.
is the point. the vocation of cheeseburger making is in danger. But so that has profound implications for everything. Now when you apply things like machine learning as well to that, you almost could have this world where you almost have prescriptive products, where when you apply 3D printing and robotics and machine learning, if you look at what happened with Netflix and House of Cards, right, where they basically chose the actors and they chose the plots based on effectively big data, looking at all of the information across their network. What happens in a world where you can have products that are basically created on demand based on your interests and the things that you want to be able to have in a product. So a lot of crazy implications. This probably falls into that category of the Roy Amora quote, which is sort of we sort of overestimate what's going to happen in the near term and dramatically underestimate what's going to happen in the long run. The long run in this case is probably the next decade or 2, where I don't think we have any idea what happens because of the compounding impact of software and robotics and 3D printing and all of the sort of things in between. So, but you can be sure that Silicon Valley will monetize all of it.
The next question over here.
So building on the last 2 questions, what one company or technology do you think is going to have a huge impact on the future of work in 10 years' time? And obviously excluding your own
Yeah,
company.
you can't name your own.
Okay.
Aaron.
Darn it.
And in 10 years.
Jive.
Box.
Please try to
Andreessen Horowitz.
There you go.
I think it's hip to say Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
So,
Bitcoin, yeah.
I would say that you said product or concept or
Technology or product company?
I think that let me give you a concept that we're seeing more and more, which is that if you go back to Mark Andreessen's piece around software eats the world, that concept dramatically affects sort of every enterprise that's out there, because you sort of fundamentally have to become a much more digital and information-driven business, which means that every product that companies deliver in the future will be either connected up to something that makes that product better, or it will be created in such a way that was driven or enabled by information that came from its consumers. So if you think about all of the disruptive technologies that we see, it's usually this combination of a product and an internet service. If you think about Nest, if you think about the gaming space, if you think about in the retail space.
Those don't affect the future of work.
Oh, the work, yeah.
Actually, the future work can be affected
Thank
by
you for the save.
we're-
Okay. Okay. Actually, you're wrong, sir. Okay.
If you think about the Internet of Things as one of the interesting kind of investment areas that we're looking at right now, and you say, well, how does that affect work? Let me give you an example. If I can, if automatically the Internet of Things connects devices, Well, I may be able to be way more efficient. Let's say my refrigerator is connected to the internet. And you'll say, well, why would I ever want to go to my iPhone and look at my refrigerator? Well, that's not really what it will be used for. In this case, that refrigerator reports back to the manufacturer to tell the manufacturer when you need a service call or a new filter in your refrigerator. And instead of a service person coming twice to your house, once with the truck to determine what the problem is and second with the part, we can go one time. That's a productivity gain by connecting devices together, right? We can do the same thing by aggregating the information that comes from a bunch of devices. So the interesting part, we have often preconceived notions about, you know, this interesting comment you made, well, that doesn't affect work. And no, I don't, it's just interesting how we often have preconceived notions about what something might be, and all of a sudden when we enable things in a very generic fashion, new ideas, new technologies, new software, new connectivity, and new great ideas often changes what we think about what might happen. And this is an example. I had never thought about that until somebody came in and said, let me show you why this Internet of Connected Things can actually improve worker productivity. And you wouldn't necessarily put those things correctly as you did. Say, well, that doesn't affect work. Well, in fact, it does. And so I think there are going to be, by having all things connected with software, big data, machine learning, we will dramatically impact our efficiency as a population.
So I am optimistic, and without naming a company, but you know, we're on the cusp of, we're in the very early innings of mobile and big data and social technologies moving to the workplace, right? You know, Ashlee said early on, we've been talking about collaboration for a long time. Unfortunately, we've been talking about collaboration, you know, in the old infrastructural model. What concerns me is I regularly sit around conference room tables with senior executives that are sitting there at the table with us talking about all of these things. I don't know if you guys go through the same thing. And there they all sit with their iPads, their iPhones, and their MacBook Airs. However, the entire line of questioning in the meeting between myself and my team with these companies is,
Do you support IE7?
Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Do you support IE7? Do you support Windows XP? Right? You know, do you support, you know, 5 generations ago? And so my worry, and I'm deeply concerned because of what we talked about earlier, the whole investment in politics and all of this capital that has been put into these organizations has them stuck, right? And unless you go department by department and you go business process by business process, group by group, with the new way to get work done, I think we're going to be stuck. So I'm worried because while everybody sits there with their cool new devices that aren't supported by the IT organization, God forbid, because the gateway is not in fact secure and someone could rip off your, you know, your email identity, there they are, you know, trying to move to a better way to get work done and make work more productive, as we've been talking about for the last hour. However, they're stuck. Yep. To move off Windows 7 is a massive, multi-year effort, right? And I'm worried about it. Quite frankly, I am.
The irony of what you talk about is the people in the room with the iPads and the iPhones, they're all emailing each other.
Of course
in the room.
Yeah, of course they are.
So all you need to do to solve this problem is say no iPads, no iPhones in meetings, and you immediately increase productivity.
But, well, let me just throw one more point out of this. I think that, sorry, this is a great question. So the,
You already
I think,
had a chance.
I know.
Yeah,
I screwed up the first
screwed
time.
up, so now
Peter saved me. I've had time to
I'll
think.
save you again.
Thank you. I know. I'll screw up. So
That's wrong.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It will be wrong, but hold on. So, two things that are really interesting because of things like mobile and because of cloud. The first is, for everybody in this room, those technologies act as sort of a multiplier for productivity. So you can do things faster, you can share information faster, you can be more connected to 2 places at once. You can be in a meeting in one place while also being connected to the conversation going on in a meeting in another place. That's amazing. That's, you know, great productivity gains. The other thing that's happening is there's a whole class of worker and emerging market that will have technology for the very first time because of mobile devices and because of cloud. And that's the really exciting thing is it's very easy to sort of get focused on our demographic of sort of knowledge worker that's you know, usually in the services part of the economy. But what's really powerful is what happens when another part of the services economy that traditionally hasn't used information to do their job better is able to now access that data much more rapidly on the construction site, or while they're doing the repair process, or while they're in the retail store working with customers. A lot of the use cases then obviously tie back to what Peter was talking about, where now you have much more you have sensors driving those processes, you have new kinds of information that's going down to their devices. All of that is only possible because of things like the iPad, because of things like Android. And that really only appeared in the past 3 or 4 years. So we are just entering the kind of swing that will actually change business process because of that.
You answered twice. You still didn't give them a product.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay.
No, I think there's a question over here. I don't know if there's there's a microphone back there.
Yeah, so my question has to do with, actually, before I ask the question, I just want to point out that I have about 4 gigabytes of email archives. I probably have dozens and dozens of documents that have different versions, and I'm convinced that there's at least 1,000 people in the company that I work for that have the same email archives. It's technical information, it's product documentation. We got PowerPoints because we've collaborated and emailed it back and forth, and you guys kind of talked about this. And I don't think the problem is that the technology doesn't exist. You guys both provide technology that offers a better way. But I think the problem has to do with the lazy inertia of just using.
Do you work for Microsoft? What's the
No,
problem
no.
here?
So,
okay.
So my question is, what do you do to overcome that inertia to get people to? Because I don't like managing my own email archives, and I don't like having my own document versions. So what do you do to work with the companies to say, hey, we offer this technology that's transformative in terms of how it's going to affect how you do business. And I kind of think if you feel like your technologies are just responding to the demands of the millennials because this is how they think, then that's preventing you from focusing on how to drive change around the technologies and getting companies to see how they can do this better. I manage my email archive. Why isn't that being managed centrally in Jive, where people make these conversation threads public? Or why isn't that being managed in Box? So I guess my question is, what can you do as a company to help companies like ours to actually use these technologies in a way that's going to save me time, so I don't have to manage all the stuff on my local hard drive?
Sure, I think that's an important point, and when I was bringing up the demographic change, I think that's just one of the forcing functions of many forcing functions that are going to change all of this. I think that this is the role of Tony and Jive and Box and myself and a bunch of other organizations that are sort of in our kind of philosophical peer group to actually make that change happen. If you look at the total spend on cloud services, you're probably not going to get past $20 or $30 billion worth of spend compared to the $4 trillion total IT budget. So we're really early in the amount of sort of penetration that these technologies have in organizations. But the trajectory on that is what's incredibly exciting, and the exponential nature of that is incredibly powerful. So it's something that is happening, and probably not happening as fast as some would like, depending on what industry you're in, or if you're in a regulated environment, or if the CIO in that organization is still trying to figure out what can they do from a compliance standpoint that will meet the needs of the regulatory environment that you might face. So there's a lot of things that are still hurdles. There's also a lot of change still happening where people are trying to figure out what bets to place for their organization. There's a lot of sort of rapid developments within the marketplace that make it hard to decide what thing to ultimately go with. At least that's been the case for the past little while. But I think that the kind of stuff that we're doing, the kind of numbers that we're seeing, I'd be very confident that whatever company you work at in the next year or two will have changed that problem. And depending on what technology they've gone with is there's a lot of factors that go into that. But from a trajectory standpoint, we're definitely heading that direction, and our companies work very, very closely with CIOs and with IT teams and with chief information security officers to make sure that there is enough understanding, there is enough awareness to what we're doing to make sure those enterprises can be secure and can scale with these types of services. So it's definitely happening.
So I think we're getting close on time, so let's have one question over here, and then I know we have another one over here. But
so from a security standpoint, what would you say to a CIO of, say, a large healthcare company that is probably still using Lotus Notes? And for some of these companies...
Sorry.
Sorry. I mean, for some of these companies, IT budgets are not as high a priority as patient confidentiality.
So I think, kind of to both questions, I'll try to bridge them. I mean, the reality is, as Aaron said, we are still in the early days here. Cloud computing, the concerns in healthcare and financial services, in particular, regulatory, FINRA laws, HIPAA laws in the healthcare industry. actually, are obstacles towards embracing the cloud, where all the data is in fact commingled with other clients. I think Jive being pretty pragmatic, we have a flexible model where we deliver our software, in both forms, out of the cloud, of course, which is the more predominant method of delivery, as well as on your premise for exactly this reason, right? That it's going to be a while before HIPAA laws and FINRA laws will support the security concerns in and around cloud, personal identity information, and what have you. So we have gone to great lengths, same code base, same exact everything, but delivering it at a higher cost to Jive, quite frankly, on one's premise, behind your firewall, on your servers, in an effort to give you the benefits of a collaborative social environment to work more productively, but at the same time address your high security needs. We don't want to do that. We want the security to be, in fact, able to be delivered out of the cloud, but we realize it's going to take a little more time for companies to become comfortable with that security model being delivered in that fashion. So it's a moment in time. We feel that we're on the way towards a complete, secure, cloud-based offering, but we recognize that today, companies in certain sectors of the market just aren't there yet.
And rest assured, we see a number of security companies come through our doors that we're making investments in to make sure that we can fully deliver on the promise of cloud computing. Well, it's happening. And look, we're in the early innings of a very long game here. And I do believe security is a very important issue. We see a lot of companies come in that are providing real secure solutions that I think will address many of these issues in the not too distant future.
Well, I think our last question is going to be over here.
Quick question. I help run a small startup. This is the second startup I've done out here, and the first one had about 20 employees, all in the Bay Area. This one's got about 25 employees, some here, some other places. And with kind of time shift and global, it's I guess, kind of managing this company, I've realized that it's hard to, I drastically underestimate the amount of friction and overhead required to manage and collaborate and work together. I'm curious kind of what's been getting done there, just because it's so hard for me, and I imagine if it's hard for me at a small company, it's around context and that kind of things, and yeah, maybe ODesk will change the world, I hope it does. I'm intrigued by the idea, but how are we going to kind of provide that context to actually reduce the amount of overhead and friction required with working with people so far away? Do you see anything going on there?
When I ran my company, we had multiple geographies, and this is a management answer as opposed to a technology answer. What really worked well for us was dividing up the groups into different physical functions so that there wasn't a tremendous amount of required overlap. I mean, just the time difference makes it a hassle. You're 9 hours difference from, let's say, India or Europe or whatever from here. That makes it a problem no matter what kind of collaboration tools you have. So I think just doing that and thinking about the functional operations within these groups will help a lot. And then, look, we are seeing with lots of social collaboration tools the ability, I think it's great. The cloud definitely enables those folks to at least collaborate on common documents, common source code, common building, and that definitely helps that whole thing. But again, thinking about these functional areas may be some advice. I had to live through it, and that was one of the things we did. Not a technology solution, but management one.
So thank you guys for attending. If you don't mind thanking the panel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good, Ben. I'm sorry.
Here I am. I'd like to thank our speakers again for sharing your perspectives with us so freely, and Ashlee for your guidance. Please accept this. I believe we have a T-shirt for you. It is the Churchill Club coveted speaker T-shirt. Please wear it in good health. Also would like to thank our sponsors. You can see by the lovely signs on stage, Jive and Box. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience. Good night.